first step for me in building anything out of plywood is to establish one clean, square, straight reference edge on the plywood. The factory edge, or as I call it, the store edge, is pretty rough. There's usually some dings and bruises and even some voids in the plywood that can be gotten rid of quite easily. You can use a table saw to cut the first clean square reference edge in your plywood. I find it safer and easier and frankly better to use my Festool TS55 track saw with the guide rail. And it has the added advantage of being able to cut two sheets at the same time. And look at this edge. Compare this to what it looked like before. With my two pieces of plywood still clamped together, I can now set up a perpendicular cut and get a clean 90-degree straight edge along the end of my plywood. Now my plan calls for 3 pieces, 26 inches by 42 inches. 2 of those pieces will be doubled up and will form the bottom of the cabinet, and 1 piece will be the top. Now in the cut list I typically put down face grain direction, but face grain has little to do with where the strength is in the plywood. This particular plywood, the stronger dimension is going to actually be what appears to be cross grain. If you want some detail about that, read this month's article in Highland Woodworking's Wood News Online. I did a pretty detailed look at the plywood cores and how the strength is laid out in the plywood. So what I'm going to do from this finished end, I've got a finished reference edge over here and a finished end down here, and I'm going to mark off a couple of marks at 26 inches, which will be 1 dimension of this piece. Now I've already made the mark over there. And then using that mark, I'm going to draw a line here just to help me establish the layout. That will help me line up the guide rail to get a perfectly square, straight cut right on the mark. So throughout the process, I have kept these boards clamped together in registration. Now, because of the cuts that I've made, I've got 3 perfectly square, smooth, straight cuts, and the only thing that's left now is to cut these boards to 42 inches long. I've marked those off, put my guide rail in place, and I'm ready to cut. Well, it seems like we've been doing a lot of cutting and we've only got 2 pieces so far, but it's going to start going pretty quick now. I've still got the 2 pieces of plywood clamped together from which we cut those first 2 pieces. Now with these clamped together, a reference edge over here, a reference edge back there, I marked off 26 inches and I'm going to make a lengthwise cut through these 2 sheets. Well, measure twice, cut once, as they always say. Just double checking here. So I've got these 2 boards still in registration. Now 3 edges that are square, straight, beautiful, and I've measured off a 42-inch length. I'm going to wind up with 4 pieces that are 26 inches by 42, and I'll show you why in a second. So let's go ahead and get these cut out. Alright, I've got 4 pieces now cut identically to 26 inches by 42 inches. Any 3 of these pieces can form the 2 bottom pieces and the top of the cabinet. The 4th piece I can cut down in width to 25 1/4 and make part G, which is the back of the cabinet. It's also 42 inches long. I really like the veneer face grain of the back to run vertically. I think that'll look better. And having looked at these 2 pieces front and back, I kind of decided this was the best looking piece. There's a little flaw down here, but when I cut off 3/4 of an inch, that'll disappear. So this will look pretty good for the back. So I'm going to turn that around and we'll make that cut now. And then we'll be ready to cut some of the other pieces. While we're cutting all this plywood, it might be good to note, even though you may have heard it 100 times before, if you're cutting your plywood on the table saw, well, first of all, be very careful. Secondly, make sure that the good side, or the show side of the plywood is facing up. You'll get a better cut. And if you're cutting with a circular saw, make sure it's just the opposite, that the face side of the plywood is facing down. If you're using a circular saw, you can make your own straight edge guide very easily. This is one of 3 different lengths that I have currently. I've made dozens and dozens of these over the years. In fact, you have to make a new one every time you change the blade in your saw. But it's really easy to make, just a few minutes time. You just need a piece of plywood, a little oversized, and 1 very straight piece of wood to glue on top of it. After you glue that down and it's stuck, take your circular saw and run it along this edge and trim off the excess of the plywood. Then this edge of the plywood will be exactly lined up with the blade in your circular saw, and it'll kind of form a little bit of a splinter guard on one side of the cut while you're making your cuts. The other thing is because you cut this off and it's in registration with the blade, this will give you an edge that you can lay down on your cut marks and get a very accurate cut. So this is real easy to do. So if you don't have the Festool system, throw one of these together and you'll get cuts almost as good. The nice thing about the Festool is that because of the unique features that the saw has and its engineering, you will get a good cut on both sides of the plywood no matter what the orientation, no splintering at all. And that's a real labor and time savers that you should take into account. Alright, now I've got 2 pieces here from the original 2 sheets of plywood that are still in registration, still clamped together, 3 nice edges. And I need 2 pieces, parts D and E, which are the divider and the end piece, and they both need to be 25 1/4 inches with the face grain running this direction, and 25 1/2 inches across the face grain. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these out, and we'll only have 1 piece left. label those. Okay, so I cut 2 of part F simply because I still had 2 pieces of plywood in registration, and along the way I'm going to need a test piece. So as long as I had plenty of plywood, I figured I'd just go ahead and cut 2. I'll pick out the best one of these from an appearance standpoint. Looks like it's going to be this one. This will be the actual part that gets used. Yeah, this is the best one. So 2 sheets of plywood, we've got all the pieces cut out, and I've got quite a bit of scrap left over. Some small pieces, an extra piece here, the F piece, and a couple of pretty large pieces over here. We'll hang on to those and we'll use them when we're testing the dado cuts in the next video. So come back next time and we'll start cutting the dados, and we'll get all that done so we're ready to glue this cabinet up. Look forward to seeing you, and thank you so much for watching. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.